What's going on, everyone? It's your man in Quirky, and today, as promised from the thumbnail of this video, I'm going to be giving you the insider edition in the world of being an esports analyst. And specifically, I'm going to be going over your role as a scouter and a draft analyst. It's really kind of my favorite part of this whole thing, and I really want to get this out and help a lot of teams on the amateur scene, especially in North America. So with that being said, let's head over into my world a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the Excel sheet for this video. It is a draft template, so it is blank, but I am going to link it in the description of this video. You'll be able to go ahead, take that link, download this, and you'll be able to edit it and adjust it to your team's needs or however you see fit. And if you make any cool adjustments, maybe you make it better or you find something you think should be added, join my Discord server. Let me know. Let's talk about it, because I'm all about this collaborative effort here, and I just want to bring good products and just good things for teams to be able to utilize in the amateur scene. But aside from all that, let's get straight to the nitty-gritty of this. So what you're looking at right now in the AN column, this is where you're going to go ahead and fill out your whole team's hero pool. You want to look to go at least a minimum 10 heroes for every role. You don't want to do too much or too little. You do too much, and it's going to make filling out the rest of this sheet take overly long. And if you do too little, you're not going to have enough to work with as you go along with this draft template when you're doing your strategic planning for drafts ahead of important matches. So aim for at least 10 picks minimum for every single role for your EXP, your jungle, your roam, your mid, and your gold laner. After you put all those down, right, you get all your champs listed below. What you want to do after that, the opponents you'll be facing, you'll also scout out their hero pools. And that's going to start over here in column R. This is where you will list all the opposing team's picks. Now, depending on where you are, this can be a lot easier or a lot harder. Over here in North America, I'm fully aware of myself personally how hard it can be to thoroughly scout opponents, because you really can only work with ranked matches. If they have made it deep enough in some of the competitive the professional competitive scene to be streamed, then you can maybe catch some games there. Luckily, there's been an upspring of these grassroots tournaments, grassroots leagues, to where you can scout a little bit more, but it's still overall a little bit difficult. So you just got to try your best here. You might end up having to take some of these from their current season plays, their all-time plays, and just have to kind of guesstimate, right, to get the best picture. But either way, if you can get some of these picks down, if you can catch some matches from online, no matter what, you're going to go in with a lot better of a plan than having nothing at all. In the other region, though, you should be able to find matches on leagues. They should be posted maybe on Wikipedia. I know a lot of big tournaments like to post the entire draft, the draft order, so it's a lot easier to fill this out. But nonetheless, you'll fill this out the same way we filled out over in AN for our team. You don't have to aim for 10. Just try to get as many picks as you can, right? Whatever you can scout, whatever you can find, list those down for all the roles. After that, after we went ahead and picked that up, I would like to say that's kind of like the bare minimum, and I feel like most teams do this part, right? You know your picks, you know the enemy's picks. Now, of course, as an analyst, it's a little bit more work, and that's where we're going to go to the next part. So after you find all their champs, through columns S all the way to AK over here, you want to start listing out those picks from your hero pool in order of what counters your best counters to your worst counters, right? So if you have a pick here in the R column, in R2, all the way across, as many picks as you can, or that you have available, you want to list them from best to least effective counters. So you know exactly what you can draft and take to kind of shut down those picks that they go for in each role. You want to do that for every single champion. And I know it's tedious, and that's why this is a job and a position in itself in the esports industry as being the analyst for amateur and professional teams. After you do that, we can't stop there. You want to do the same thing for your champions and your hero pool, because you got to get into the head of the opponent, right? This isn't a one-way street, it's two-way. The better you can get into the enemy's head, the better this is going to work for you. So after you list out your own counters into their picks, you want to look at your picks and say, from their champion pool, what could they use to counter our more prioritized picks? And you'll fill that out from column AO all the way down to BF over here. Or at least to as far as you can fill out with the champions you're aware of that they pick. And you want to do that for every single row of champions that you have. fill out the counterplay from their hero pool. After you finish that, you're starting to have a pretty good image of how the draft could be played out. But again, more steps to take. After you look through those and you see what they can counter through columns AO to BF, this is where these little numbers you've probably been staring at and that are different colors and wondering what the heck are these for. Well, I'm going to tell you. So when you go through your picks and you see the counters, there's always going to be some picks that are going to have less counters than others, right? And the less counters they have, or maybe just the least effective they are, will boost this overall score. Now, the lower the score is, the better. This is what we're going to call the blind pick rating over here in column AM. If it's a 1, that means it's very valuable for your team as a blind pick. Obviously, that foregoing if there's any counter picks from them that they could pick up potentially anyways from a different role or such. But on paper, from role to role, hero to hero, the least that it's countered, the better it stands as a blind pick. And the numbers will dictate, what color will go in there. The higher it is, the less valuable it is as a blind pick. So that's kind of how that'll go as you go through this. So the higher you are, the worse it is as a blind pick. The lower it is, the better it is as a blind pick. Really simple to follow, very easy to track. And that's how you'll start to figure out some blind picks and whatnot. But enough from this section of the draft. Let's go ahead and move over a little bit to this section. So after you have that, I feel like that's a good basis for you. Now the rest of this is kind of optional for you, right? And this is my favorite part. If you're able to fill this out, you're going to be in like tip top shape, boss. Like I can't stress enough how valuable this is if you can get this information. So this kind of goes back to what's currently available, right, for you to be able to track. Again, there's a lot of leagues starting to pop up, a lot of tournaments that make it a little bit easier in North America, but of course abroad, this is a lot easier to fill out. And that's going to be their draft strategy section. This is all about the draft order and the draft rotation, when they like to prioritize their picks. So, for example, if you go through a league they participate in, let's say they played in NACT, and in every single match you went through, out of, 30 matches, they took EXP in the first pick for blue side 17 times, right? Over half the times in their matches, they pick EXP first. You're probably gonna see that EXP taken first in the match that you'll be playing against them. And that's where this kind of comes in handy. As you fill this out, the more matches, the better. You'll start to understand their draft rotation order. And it works so well because, let's say here, right? They take a support. You see every time they draft, they take Rome at R2, right? They like to pick it second pick on a red side, or they like to pick it third pick on a blue side. That'll let you know, based off that pattern, it might be a great idea to pick up your Rome either in R3 or in B3 to be able to have that counter pick potential up against whatever Rome they take, just based off their draft pattern. So again, this is a little harder to fill out if you don't have that kind of information, but if you do have access to it, this will be so instrumental into being able to completely render a team useless at draft. And we know draft is half the battle. If you can come out the gates with a great draft plan, at that point, it's all about execution. You just got to go out there and hit your marks, and you already know where all the sweet spots are. So it shouldn't be that hard to go ahead and execute. But that's where this whole section comes into play. So again, if you're able to fill it out, great for you. If you're not, that's okay, because we still did all that other foundation work, lining up hero pools and counter picks and all that. Now, aside from that, our next section is going to start up here in column K, up here in column K1. It's going to be from best bands all the way down to best blind picks. That'll end all the way over here in P13. For the best bands, you want to go based off their hero pool and kind of what we went over for your hero pool, right? What are the picks that they have that kind of would be detrimental to your game plan? Actually, let me take a step back here. because these really go in handy together. This section is draft strategy, their draft strategy, and the best bands are like peanut butter and jelly. I can't believe I almost skipped that. So we know how we were talking about going back to the picks and the roles. Let's say, right, their mid laner is just like they're a phenomenal mid laner. You know, they have like one or two picks that they are just the very best at. Like, you don't want to let them have it, right? A lot of teams will go in a draft and immediately ban out those picks. But if you have access to that information that we were talking about earlier and you're able to fill this out, let's say their mid laner never picks in first rotation. They always pick mid lane in the second rotation of picks. It would be senseless, right, to ban out the mid laner in the first three bans because they never drafted in the first half. You can wait until the second phase of bans to ban it out. And that's where things like this, the draft rotations, come in handy. You won't waste bans in the first phase that you could have otherwise delayed till later on when it would have actually been impactful. Because, again, if they're drafting second phase, you don't need to ban first phase. Wait till second phase. So when you're getting that type of information, that's where it makes filling out the best bans a lot easier. Because now you know their draft rotation, you know what roles they prioritize. It makes those first phase bans a lot easier, and subsequently the second phase bans a lot easier. And with those best bans, after you fill all those out, you'll go down to the best blind picks. Now this goes back to, if you took the time to do so, the blind pick rating. This is where you kind of will relate to figure out what you can fill out over here in your best blind picks. The only caveat here is that you want to be careful in what you take. Just because it has a high blind pick rating, or I guess low, doesn't mean you should exactly just be like, oh, let's just take this because it has a great score rating. Because at the same time, you still want to take things that are flexible. You don't want to get deadlocked with a pick early on, especially if you're on blue side. The worst thing you can do is not start your draft off blue side with a flexible pick. You put yourself in a serious red zone if you don't have a flex pick opening off the draft. Most times, almost every time, but most times. So you want to go through those blind picks and see what is also flexible and also what has, you know, obviously the least counters. And then you can start listing out some blind picks in your roles. It makes it a lot easier for that first pick, first two picks, whatever the case may be, when you know that it's going to be pretty strong and that the opposing team won't have a lot of counters to it. So that's how you'll go through and fill out the best blind picks. Moving on from that, have another section down here, the most likely bans against us. Again, you still have to be in the opponent's head as well. This is not a one-way street. Back to that two-way street mentality, you want to think about our hero pool, right? The things that you had listed. Remember, we listed the counters from the enemy's hero pool. Look at this and see, what picks do they not have a lot of counters for? Because you have to keep in mind, if you're doing all this homework or research on them, they're probably doing the same amount of homework or research to you. Or at bare minimum, if they do just look at hero pool and their hero pool and just go through the 10% effort of listing out heroes, they're going to see what they're going to struggle up against. So once you come back over here, go back over the information we filled out through AO all the way to BF and get into their head. Start figuring out what they're going to look to ban. If you have a jungler who's exceptional on Fanny and Ling against a team that doesn't do well up against, you know, split push and these heavy divers, they're probably going to look to ban out Fanny, Ling inside of, you know, the jungle category. And the cool thing about this is that, as I was typing jungle, couldn't even type Ling. As you fill that out, you want to adjust the colors as well, right? So if it's high priority, that's what these colors are for. Green is like the most likely to ban, yellow, and then red is like probably not going to happen, but it is like a potential, it could be banned out. And the other thing about that is when you know what they're most likely going to ban out against you, it makes you be able to prep against, you know, worst case scenario. Because that's also something you kind of want to focus on, is worst case scenarios. Because if you can make a plan to kind of be there in the back burner worst case scenarios, you're going to be good. Obviously, you want everything to go right for you in draft, but if you're able to cover your base where if everything goes wrong and you already have something ready to go, you're on the money. You're on the ball at that point. And why this is also very good is you never get caught off guard. or you won't feel caught off guard. So when the drafts are happening, you want this to feel almost automatic, like AI level. Everything they take, everything they ban, no matter what, as soon as it's your turn, boom, boom, boom. I mean, you want to fire it off in rapid succession. You want to push the tempo at draft. The same way, like in game, a lot of times you want to try to snowball. You want to try to do the same thing at draft. If you have an answer for everything, right? They've been doing their homework. They're like, if we ban this, and we take this, they'll struggle. Well, at draft, if they're doing all this and you're just rapidly responding to everything, you're not wasting any time because you have your game plan already set. You have every base covered. It's gonna make them start hesitating. You'll start winning that psychological battle, the mental warfare before the game starts, because nothing is making you hesitate. Nothing is making you pause. No ban is making you take the full 30, 45 seconds to figure out your next move. You saw their move before they ever made it. That's where this kind of comes into play. You don't get caught off guard. You don't shoot yourself in the foot. Speaking of shooting yourself in the foot, I do need to go back just a little bit. These picks, I think, so both sides, your best blind picks and for your counter matchups that we put down through columns S and AK, for sure, bare minimum, you need to put 6 champions. Obviously, we listed down 10 minimum through our hero pool, but obviously not all 10 are going to be counter picks. You want to try to get at least 10 counter picks up against the enemy hero's composition or their hero pools. Reason being is, again, one of those worst case scenarios could be of like a 5-man target ban, triple target ban towards a specific role. You've seen these type of things like when teams face blacklist, right? One of the older popular strats was to try to completely ban out my Venus support picks. 5 bans. You don't want to get caught out like that. You want to at least have 6 picks. So if you have some star-studded player that's just eating up bans from the enemy team, you still got 1 pick in your pocket to kind of beat that punch. So you definitely want to make sure you do cover that. Again, covering your bases, covering your weaknesses so you don't get caught off guard. And as soon as they use all those 5 bans, you still hit them with the pick and they're like, wait a minute, it didn't even make them second guess their draft. So that's where that'll pay into that effect. Now down here, starting from column K37, this is where you can start to making notes of the enemy team. Obviously, it says notes. But what I mean by that is, again, part of the analyst part is going through game data, seeing what went wrong, seeing what went right. If at all accessible, you want to try to do some VOD reviews of the opposing team's matches. Aim to at least, this is what I try to do for sure, at least the first 5 minutes of the game. I cannot stress that hard enough. You want to try to go over at least the first 5 minutes of the game. Everything else after that, candy in the bag. Very good. If you have the time to go through all the matches, the full length, do so. But the laning phase is super important, because before these drafts really come into play, the mid game, the late game 5v5s, when it actually matters, the synergy of the compositions, there's the laning phase. It doesn't matter whether you have a good early, a bad early, a good late, a bad late. Whoever is winning out in laning phase, is winning out the opening gates, is likely to win, right? This I cannot stress enough. If you can win out those first 5 minutes, you're in good standing to win matches. At that point, it's all about not messing up and losing out at what you earn. The first 5 minutes are very crucial during the laning phase. You can easily overcome a better team if you can win in laning phase. So again, in your notes, at least the first 5 minutes of their matches, if at all accessible, you want to go ahead and start writing down things you can take note of. Look at how they play and think about what you would do in a situation and what they did in the situation. Because at that point, now you can start to highlight maybe they do something a lot better than you, or they do something a lot worse. And that's where you can start to take advantage or exploit their weaknesses in their gameplay, specifically in the laning phase, which is going to translate to a better mid and obviously a better late and conclusion of the game to hopefully end up with a W in your corner. Aside from that, you want to look at some more important things. If you do have the time to go past the first 5 minutes, start looking at their rotations. Look at the jungler pathing. Do they always take one single path? It's a weakness we could look to exploit. How do they set up their level 2s? Do they like to go double lane and EXP to get that early level 2 advantage? Yes or no? You can start to try to look for an advantage there to exploit. How do they set up neutral objectives? Are they good at visioning? Do they camp a particular bush when they look for pickoffs every single game? Things like that. You want to put that all down in this notes section. Anything at all that has nothing to do specifically with listing out champions and, you know, figuring out the draft, you want to put it there. Matter of fact, even if you do want to add things in the draft, like if you go through this portion here, their draft strategy, if you notice patterns, like we were talking about that EXP all the time, like kind of first pick blue side, if you find those type of patterns, you can put those down here in the notes, because that's all good information. It's something you can play around, you know, and that just goes with any of these picks. Any patterns you see up here in their draft strategy, throw it down here in the notes. Anything to get the dub. You have to be thorough. You have to comb through all the data. Like we said, you're going through all of the game data to be able to come up with an overall image, and you're going to start painting the perfect picture down here in the notes. This is where you'll start to relay back to when you need some information outside of the pick this, pick that, ban this, ban that type of strat methodology. That's all going to go here in the notes. Now down here, this is, oh man, this is the candy store of the draft. Again, it's optional, and it's only as strong as the resources available to you as far as getting these gameplays like the drafting phases picked up. If you're not able to see enemies' drafts or, you know, catch them in any leagues, any tournaments, it's not really going to help you out. I would also go on to say, obviously, like it works better in higher volumes. So things like leagues, I wouldn't say tournaments. Tournaments, this isn't very good. Just like a standard tournament, single elimination, this isn't the greatest. But if you're doing that league format, double round robin, playoffs, and then the, you know, champions, this is where this tool becomes just immensely impactful for you, because now you go through all of their picks, right? So where you list their hero pool, you throw down all the picks and see how much impact they had in their overall games at draft. How many times it was picking, how many times it was banned, how many times it was stolen, the total appearances it made, and then obviously the overall percentage of the presence. That's what that's going to be. The presence is the total steals, the total bans, total picks, and then divided by the total matches that this team played during, you know, whatever league or whatever format it is that you're getting this information from. And from that, you'll see how much presence overall they had in their matches. And again, this gets stronger in higher volume. The more data you have to collect, the more numbers you can, you know, fluff up through this, the better this gets. So again, I wouldn't use this against like some short form tournament, kind of stray away from this. Maybe you still can use this section, their draft strategy, because rotations are pretty standard. But overall, how many times they'll take a pick in a long you know, it's not that great if you don't have a lot of volume. So just be wary of that. Don't focus too much on this section if you don't have high volume data to work with. You really don't need it at that point. It's a super sweet bonus if you can, but if you can't, no worries, all good. So at that point now, we have pretty much concluded scouting, right? Our scouting and a bit of the draft analysis. You have at this point, you've basically filled out everything, the best of your ability. You have a really good sense of this team, a really good sense of how to win out on paper at draft. Now, this is where we come over to the actual draft layout, right? What we want to prioritize to pick, what we want to prioritize to ban for blue side, red side, and then as you go down, you can make some additional drafts. Again, worst case scenarios, alternate, you know, scenarios, anything like that. You can fill out more. You know, the more prepared you are, the better. You know, I don't always fill these out completely. I'm going to be honest. I probably go through maybe 2 or 3 for both sides at max. And then obviously, if I know it'll be like maybe a longer series, or just longer series in general, not a lot of best of ones, but starting out the gate, best of 3s, BO5s, BO7s, obviously you want to go for more drafts, because you can use the same drafts over and over again, but eventually you're going to have to, you know what I mean, go for a different strategy. So that's where these secondaries and others come into play. But over here for the main blue draft, main red This is this is kind of how I look at it. This is my own viewpoint on the drafting. Now that you have all this information, it's time to put it to the test. Uh, as you can see, I only have about 3 of these spots filled out with picks, and the bands only have about 2. So my overall goal, right, coming into the draft, I know for sure I want to have at least 2 solidified bands. Like, I know I'm going to ban these 2 picks no matter what, up against the opponents in those first 3 bands. The third band is kind of situational. Um, it's kind of like a read the room band, kind of see where they're heading with their bands, the direction they're going, and then kind of band forward. Or if we get just a moment of clarity where we know what we want to take, but we need to ban this one specific pick. This is where this third ban can kind of come into play. So 2 confirmed bans for me, bare minimum, heading into the draft. Third, leave it hanging in the air so you have some flexibility there left on your bans. But aside from the bans, to the picks, obviously, right? Your first pick, the blind, right? Your best blind picks, whatever role you're going for, this is where you kind of want to have that slotted. Whatever role you like to blind pick, and whatever is the greatest blind picks that we have listed for those roles, smack dab right here, B1. After that, you want to have, you can't put a singular pick. I don't want you guys to make the mistake of taking this and putting one pick only for everything. That's why I made, one pick here, the slash, and then another pick. You want to be flexible. You want to be opening your drafts. So really, the only pick that should be kind of up there is or just listed by itself is kind of your first pick. But even that, you want to put more options, because obviously, if it's a good blind pick, that means you're probably very comfortable with the pick, and just the enemies know like it's something that even if you don't play all the time, it's something that you could pull out, and it's very damaging to their usual drafts. So you want to have at least like maybe 3 blind picks in the back of your mind ready to go, just to avoid that situation, right? Maybe even 4. Kind of back to like having 6 instead of 5, maybe 4, because the first 3 bans, like they could just ban out 3 jungle picks, 3 roamer picks, anything like that. Those worst case scenarios that we were talking about earlier, maybe you want to do that with those, even with your your first pick, because your blind pick to get banned out. So you want to have that emergency pick just in case, a couple emergency picks. But moving down, yeah, like I said, a couple picks in the second, the third, to kind of have an idea of. And even down here, right, if you look at this closely, I didn't put the name of champions here in the 4th and 5th pick, because again, you want to be flexible and open with your drafts. And of course on blue side doesn't matter, because 4 and 5 get picked up together, but like red side, they get taken one by one. You want to be flexible in whether you take a role, not necessarily a pick, but we can move the EXP up or down here. It's interchangeable with the roam, or whatever picks you like to draft in the second phase, you can make them interchangeable. You don't need this to be overly complicated. Okay, it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. It doesn't need to be super detailed and super filled out. Is the main point over here on the draft strategy. Leave it loose. Leave some situational spots for your draft on bans, on picks, on the role placement. Don't be one-dimensional. Don't hard lock yourself, because that's when you do stuff like that, that's where it makes things like this, you're easy to track. Okay, be flexible. Keep some openings up. Throw some curveballs. Be adjustable for any type of game plan you're caught in the middle of. Make it easy on yourself. Like you see, like even down here, these last 2 bans, I don't have anything there. Okay, because things are situational. It really depends on how the draft is going, where the momentum's heading toward, where the direction is. So again, leave it flexible, and you want to kind of want to go through that process for all of these, right? Don't deadlock. Don't put a single pick in all of these. All right, just don't do that, because if they get the ban on one of the picks that you put down, that's where you get that hitch. Like, oh snap, we didn't have a backup plan for this. We were 100% certain we were getting this pick. No, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't care how prepared you go into it. I deal with it. I know other analysts and coaches go through this. No game plan survives first contact with the enemies, right? Something is gonna go quote unquote wrong, right? There's gonna be a pick you didn't want to get banned, a pick that gets stolen that the enemies know you, and you guys like kind of contest the pick and they take it from you, on their side, something's gonna go wrong. You will not be 100% accurate. So don't deadlock yourself and think you're gonna get everything you want and you're gonna be able to stop everything you want. Be flexible. That's how you want to fill all of these out. But with that though, you have now completed a complete draft strategy. Yes, it was tedious. Yes, it was a lot of work, but I guarantee you, you will win more matches, more competitive matches at the amateur or professional scene if you're able to completely dissect and pull apart the draft game plans from your opposing team and get yours in motion before these matches start. It's going to add up wins in that W column. I can assure you of that much. The rest is just you kind of practicing. Like everything else, it is a skill set. You're going to make mistakes when you're first trying to utilize this, when you're trying to make your draft plans. You might have a bit of oversight. You may forget something. You may make the mistake of not knowing counter picks. You know, like I said, you have to, a lot of these, like, you have to list counter picks out. You may not know all the greatest counter picks, right? Some of this is kind of live and learn, test and trial and error. The best I could say is for sure pay attention to the pro scene. See what matchups are winning head on with whatever other picks. Look, I know some of the MPLs have their own sites with their own statistics. They list down champion pools and what's being utilized, what's, you know, having the highest win rates. They even list their win loss column up against certain picks. Use all of that information. Your job as an analyst is to go through all the information, all the data. If you can, you know, go through all that and you're able to up your counter pick knowledge, it's going to help you out a lot. So that's like something you can make. You may not know them all, but as you play more, the more you watch these competitive matches and such, the more you try picks, right, in your own matches and see what counters and what doesn't. And the better you can be at that, the more useful this will be. You're going to make mistakes though. Starting out, that's just a non-negotiable. You're going to make mistakes. It's a new thing you're trying. It's a new skill set. Don't get discouraged. Keep trying. And again, like I said at the start of the video, I have a Discord server. It's just been reopened. It was private at the time, but it has been reopened. I'm opening it up for the public. Anyone that wants to join, if you want to come ask questions, if you want to make suggestions for this tool, anything, make sure you join in there. Let's talk. Let's discuss. Let's collaborate. Let's get this going in the right direction so all the teams can be strong. I know people are probably going to be wondering, like, why the heck would you share this? Why would you share what you use to everyone? Again, I'm a big supporter of the whole unity and pushing everyone to get better together. If this can help out my own region, if all the North American teams can start utilizing this, handing this off to their analysts, to their coaches to make their drafting better, it's only going to end up making me better as well in the long run, or maybe help a team in another region that's trying to, you know, reach higher levels. I want everyone to get good. If we're all good, these matches, these games are going to be interesting, not just from the actual Land of Dawn action, but even at the draft, man. Let's have it all, okay? We can do it if we all work together, and that's what I'm doing with this. I'm sharing it, and I want to let you guys have this to utilize for your own teams. I hope this was a great video. I hope I explained everything to you clearly. If not, drop a comment with questions. Join the Discord server with questions. I'll make sure to answer anything you got. I did make it after all, so there's nothing you can ask me that I can't explain to you in detail. So with that being said, I'm going to leave you guys off with this. As always, do your homework and do your research. Until next